not now.
You're
You can get in
cringe.
later. Okay, so if you want to come up later, you have the opportunity to. But we're still experimenting with different like events. So this one doesn't
All right,
work out. We won't have another one.
that's fine.
Yeah,
So
Okay,
could I present like my thing?
all
of
right.
course.
Are we still
Yeah.
like are we
So
still on the like topic about like our subjective beliefs now, and then you just want to talk about like the actual arguments for God's existence later? Because you guys wanted to ask me a question about like vampires.
well, I was gonna just give my like opening like statement, I guess,
Well, to help you out in the debate, if you're an
for
atheist,
the people.
well, if you're an atheist, the best thing for you to do is like just leave it up for me to prove God. So like, if I were you,
Well, yeah.
I'd open it up. Like, if I were you, I would try to just get you to make me prove that God exists. This is to help you out. You know, I'm just letting you know.
Hmm.
You can do what you please, but if I were you, I would let me go first because I technically have the positive, right? I would technically have the
Yeah.
positive, yeah. So I'll just like
Well,
start.
I mean, okay. If you want to go first, you can.
Yeah. So basically, do you know what Malcolm's model is?
No.
Okay, let me just post it. Where can I post this syllogism at? Where can I post it at?
You could post it in VC text.
VC
Yeah,
text.
I'll post it in event chat.
Oh, event chat. Okay,
In the what?
Yeah,
event. All
event
right.
chat.
Let me
Event.
see where it's at.
Yeah, I
Over
mean,
right
like
here.
this whole debate. No, actually, no, actually, just do it in a VC
Oh,
tab
already
because this
like
whole stage is in the wrong channel for some
oh
reason.
VC text.
Oh, wait. Is this the modal ontological
Yeah, this is the. I mean, this is
or
the
a different
wrong.
thing?
I
No,
think
this is
it's like
the wrong stage channel. So yeah,
oh VC text. All right. So I'll just explain
yeah.
it. Basically, either God exists or does not exist. God can either come into existence or no go out of existence. If God exists, then he cannot cease to exist. Therefore, if God exists, he exists necessarily. Right? If God does not exist, then he cannot come into existence. Therefore, if God does not exist, his existence is impossible. Therefore, God's existence is either necessary or impossible. Right? However, God's existence is only impossible. The concept of God is contradictory. The concept of God is not self contradictory. Therefore, God's existence is not impossible, basically.
Okay, so the argument is essentially like, um, God possibly exists, therefore God exists.
Because, God exists in all possible worlds.
Yeah, so the problem I have with this argument is kind of a misunderstanding of the term possible world. I think I think it's where the confusion lays. So, like when we say something exists in a possible world, it's not like, metaphysically there's some
Yeah.
actual world in which it exists,
No,
right?
wait, hold on. I base this syllogism off of like very very definition in each and every word, right? Because that's how we know things to be true. Like that's how we define things based off definition. So when you attack this argument, attack it off of like the very definition of each word. So I I wrote it like this on purpose because you know what necessary existence is, right?
Yeah.
Existing in all possible worlds. So it's like letting you know. Like I'm using it in a very, very like strictly semantical way.
So so are you sort of defining it into existence?
No, I think like like the definition of God is like a necessary
Well,
like a
if you
necessary
define
being.
God as
Yeah,
if you define as if you define God as existing in the actual world, it seems like you're just
that's not my definition of God though. God is just a being that exists.
you
Is
said
that hold on? God is
necessary.
yeah. God is like a being that's necessary, right? Do you know if like for God like to not like necessarily quote unquote exist or be impossible? Because is that what you're arguing? That God is like impossible, right? You're arguing that God cannot possibly exist.
It really depends on what you mean, but
So
in general, yeah.
okay, so I'm about to say because you know if
Real quick, real quick, I just want to ask. So, Emmett, um,
Yeah.
to be clear on your position, are you an atheist or how do you
Yes.
identify? Okay, so
Agnostic. Yes.
do you identify as atheist or agnostic?
Both.
Okay, could you explain that to Dead Boy?
Yeah. So agnosticism is just like the existence of God is unknown or unknowable, and atheism is a lack of belief in God.
Okay. So you think it's unknowable. You just like okay, okay. So
I think it's unknown,
it's unknown. All right. I'm telling
and
you.
I
So it's unknown. So
what
you don't think you don't think God's existence is impossible.
um no.
So you think it's
I
God?
mean, can we define God?
Yeah, I think
That'll
God's
help.
a necessary being that like it's like a supreme like a deity basically. You know the definition of God is as like a being, a necessary being that's like a deity and stuff like that. But like that doesn't like matter. I'm asking like, do you think the existence of God is impossible?
So hang on real quick, just so we can define it, so we're all clear, like on just the standard definition, right?
Hmm.
It's a deity or god, supernatural being considered divine or sacred.
Yeah,
So just
a necessary
there's a
being.
general description.
Yeah, and I think God
Okay.
should be necessary. Yeah. So again, I'm asking you. I'm gonna ask you again. Do you think God's existence is impossible?
No.
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 So you think it is possible?
Yes.
So you think God can possibly exist?
Yes.
And you're debating me about God's existence.
Yep.
So you see how that like wouldn't work out for you, right? Cause you like aren't you like on like the stance to prove that like God doesn't exist? Isn't that what you're here for? Like you were initially
I'm not the one with the burden of proof
well,
though.
So real quick, Emmett, I just wanted to bring something out real quick because this is kind of important. An atheist
Sure.
is someone who doesn't believe in God. So an agnostic is someone who doesn't believe it's possible to know for sure. So which one are you?
yeah.
It's
So
you
are
cannot be both.
What?
yeah, you cannot be
You
both.
Okay,
can't
hold
be
on.
So
both
do
an
you think
atheist and an
so
agnostic.
do you think God
Yes,
exists?
you can. Okay, so agnosticism is just a claim to knowledge, and
To
atheism is a
knowledge.
claim to belief, right?
Yeah.
So if I ask you the question, do you believe in God? And you say no, that makes you an atheist,
Okay, do you believe in
right?
God?
No.
So you're atheist.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm gonna ask you again: is God's existence impossible?
I don't believe there is no God.
So
I mean, wait, hold on. Let me ask you a
so you
question.
contradicted yourself
Well,
because you
let me
hold
let
on.
me ask you a question. Do you
Ho-
believe unicorns exist?
that, I don't think that's relevant. In it of
Are the
yourself,
existence
hold
of
on.
unicorns
I'll tell you why.
impossible?
I'll tell you why the debate just ended right there. Right. So in and of yourself, you know, like why like debating, you have to follow under a parameter of logic, and your arguments need to be coherent. Right. You just like made an incoherent argument, so I don't know what you're arguing
No,
now.
no, no. I'm just trying to explain because like you cannot believe in something and also say it's possible for it to exist, right?
That then that
That's
mean
all I
hold
was
on.
trying to
Then
show.
that means you think there's a possibility of it existing. So that means you technically do believe in it. Yes, that's literally what it means. Like
That's
aliens.
why I
Well, hold on.
asked you.
Aliens.
That's why I
Aliens.
asked you.
Hold on. Aliens. We have no proof that aliens exist, but in the back of your head, you know that it's possible that they do. You're not gonna outright make the statement aliens are impossible. That's what I'm asking you. Like, do you think God is impossible?
Okay, I'm just no, but that
Okay.
doesn't mean
So you're not
anything to my
atheist.
atheism.
Okay. Okay.
Hang on real quick, Dead Boy, let Emmett state his their full position,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah. Please do.
Yeah,
'Cause I'm
okay.
confused.
All I'm saying is like all I'm saying is you cannot believe something and also think it's possible for it to exist, right? So like
That's
that's
not.
why I brought up unicorns.
That's,
Unicorns is an example of something there's nothing there's no there's no contradiction which is entailed by
yeah.
the existence
Do,
of unicorns, right?
do
But
you know where
you
uniform?
still don't believe in them.
Hold on. You know where unicorns like first originated from? Like you know, like that's not like analogous, right? You know, unicorns originated from like a old
It is
fairy tale. Like there's you know it's
it's
never described as an actual like thing that exists. It's just like from literally from an old like fairy tale. So it's like that's not analogous at all.
no, it is analogous because that's all I'm trying to prove. I'm just trying to show an example of something which
Okay.
could
So
possibly
you're
exist.
agnostic. You're not atheist then.
Oh, hang on, guys. Let's give each other at least like 1 minute to complete their statement
Okay.
before
Okay.
responding.
Okay. So before this, I just want to know: do you think? Please answer
Yeah.
this question coherently. Give me like a coherent answer. And I'm gonna
Yep.
just I'm gonna grandstand you this. I'm gonna make it so that you believe this. Like this is your argument. Do you think that God's existence is impossible? It's a yes or no question.
No.
So you're not an atheist. So therefore, you
No.
okay. So if you're okay, so I can't. You're switching like stance to stance like 3 to 4 times. And
I'm
again,
not though.
okay, Bond, did he not? Did he not just say he was atheist?
I'm
Then now he
I'm not.
says, yeah, you like literally, you literally switched stances like 4 times.
Right now, we need a clear position. But
Yeah,
Dead Boy, to be fair, we need to let Emmett after you're asking questions, but before Emmett could finish answering
that's
the
fine.
first one.
That's fine.
So go ahead and ask a question
Okay.
to Emmett right now in regard to theism and what we're discussing, and then allow Emmett to complete the response before, like, you know what I mean?
Okay. So I'm gonna ask you, what are you? Just what are you?
I'm an agnostic atheist.
All right. You like know like why like Bond said you couldn't be like that, right? There's like no like middle point.
What?
Like you like Bond like Bond's our moderator. Like you like know like why he said there's no middle point, right? Hmm?
I'm. Can you repeat? I am not.
All
I
right.
don't
Bond
understand what
said
you're
there's
saying.
no middle point. You can't be both. You have to pick one or the other.
Okay, we should probably define the terms then.
I mean,
So I'll define it for what we're in this context. So agnosticism and theism are not mutually exclusive. This is why one deals with knowledge and one deals with belief. Technically, we are all agnostic, as no one can know whether a God exists or not, because every belief is considered a theory. But atheists won't believe in one without evidence. So that's the difference. So so you would want to ask Emmett that question. That's what would define whether Emmett was an agnostic or atheism. Is it based on evidence?
or belief.
Okay, are you asking me?
Go ahead.
Yes.
So basically, yeah, it's like I don't believe it because to me, I haven't seen a valid and sound argument or convincing evidence for God.
Yeah. So I gave you a valid and sound argument. It's like Malcolm's modal, basically. It's like literally like
Yeah, well, I already said what my problem was with it. It's how all we're saying when we say something exists in a possible world is the existence of this thing entails no contradictions. I don't know how you could get from this thing, if it did exist, um, entails no contradictions, therefore it exists. Like,
um I mean that's not like it's not what it says at all. It's saying that
I
you can
that's
call
what a
something
possible
I
world is.
hold on. You can
I think
call
right now you guys are getting caught up on the semantics of like
yeah.
the definition. We're technically all agnostics, okay? The main factor here is, you know, whether or not you are going to deny there is a God until it's proven, which would be atheism, or in your case, Dead Boy, you stated you were a Christian. So why don't we start with Dead Boy, if you can explain why you take on the Christianity
No, no,
belief, and then
I'm not
Emmett, maybe
in this debate
you
in
could
this debate.
discuss why you
Hold on.
disagree with
In
it.
this debate, I'm not taking Christianity. I'm just taking the existence of a God. I'm not that like
Okay.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair enough. Yeah. Then explain that, and then
Yeah.
let's go that direction, because I think we're getting caught up too much just on the
Okay.
definitions.
So I would go back to like
Well,
my shit, which like is like basically based off like verbatim definitions, and I hope you agree. Definitions are how you define things. So like whether you like it or not, that's what I'm going to like use, right? I'll just explain it again. God can either come into existence nor go out of existence. You would agree? I'll just go like one by one, right? Well, so
what?
I'm gonna go one by one on my syllogism. Either God exists or does not exist. You would agree to that. That's why we're debating. It's two different sides. Yeah, you would agree to that, right? Either
Yeah,
God.
so
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, I don't like. I think you're kind of confusing um, different types of atheism because there's people who say God doesn't exist, and there's people who say I don't believe he does. Right?
So yeah, either God exists or he does not exist. Yeah, that wouldn't denounce like the fact of those two things, those two variables, existing and non-existing. Just because you don't believe he does, that doesn't
Yeah. No,
denounce the like two
I
variable
agree.
facts. So you'll agree that he either exists or does not exist, right?
Yeah.
Okay. God can either come into existence or God existence. You would agree to that?
Hold on. Let me see. Okay. God can neither come into existence nor go out of existence. I guess I would need to know why that would be the case based on our definition.
Okay. God is a necessary being. It's divine, immortal, all that shit. It's like he can't like literally like not exist. But if something doesn't exist, it can't come into existence. Like you would understand that, right?
Okay. So sure.
Yeah. So if God exists, he cannot cease to exist. I hope you know when someone dies, they don't cease to exist, right? They don't have their existence erased. You would agree to that? Please do.
What?
Okay, you would agree to like if God
Okay.
exists, he
Hold on.
cannot cease
What
to exist,
if?
right?
Wait. If they? Okay. Moving. What?
You agree to that?
What did you say?
If God exists, he cannot cease to exist.
Yes.
Okay. Therefore, if God exists, he exists necessarily. That's like the definition of God I'm using. So like, yeah. If God does not exist, then he cannot come into existence, which is true. There's things like that that's like contradictory, right? Therefore, if God does not exist, his existence is impossible, which that is true. Things that don't exist is therefore impossible, right?
I really, my problem is the definition of possible world.
That's not. I didn't. We didn't get to that part yet. It's just
Okay.
the singular
I mean,
definition of
that's,
impossible. Like you know what impossible means, right?
yeah.
All right. Let me just like read it out loud again. Um, for like definition of impossible. So just so we're like on the same page. Impossible would mean like not able to occur, exist, or to be done. Okay. So basically, therefore, God's existence is either necessary or impossible. Again, this is like very semantics based. That's why I'm using the word necessary, right? Necessary existence is like in all a being that exists in all possible worlds. However, God's existence is only impossible if the concept of God itself is self-contradictory, because the definition of God is a being that exists in all possible worlds, right? So therefore, for you to go against the definition of God, right, you would need to prove to me like why he in and of itself it's self-contradictory, why it's a contradiction in itself for him to exist. If you can prove to me why God's like the definition of God itself is self-contradictory, it therefore be impossible, then I lose the debate.
Okay, sure. I could go down that route, or I could say this, which, yeah, I am. But I guess I could ask you, like, if you're defining God as a necessary being,
Uh-huh.
right? And what you mean by that is God exists in all possible worlds,
Yes, sir.
which means he exists in the actual world.
You would.
So you're defining him as existing,
That's
which
that.
is begging the
Hold
question.
on. That's like how definitions would work. I
I
mean,
mean, I just demonstrated it.
hold on, that's how definitions would work. I mean, the definition of God is a being that exists in all possible worlds. So unless you want to like go like back centuries and try to debunk the definition of God, which the only way for you to do that is to prove it'd be impossible for him to exist. Basically, the argument goes down to this. It's like a loophole. If you can't prove God's impossible, then based off the definition of God, he exists. That's why like this argument's so good. It's a loophole. It's a loophole for you.
Okay, but if I define,
Well,
like, here's what I'm saying. If I define like a chair as necessarily existing,
That's
right?
not. But the thing is, again,
Wait,
as this
hold
now,
on.
go
And
ahead.
and then I
I'll let you
say,
go.
that
Dead
means this
boy,
chair
let Emmett finish.
I'll let him go.
and this chair exists in all possible worlds. Therefore, it exists in the actual world. Therefore, this chair exists, right? So But you would disagree, right?
Do you know why I would disagree?
Because it's begging the question.
That's not why. Because that's not the definition of a chair. I wouldn't
Well,
say I
well,
wouldn't say a chair exists in
what if
all
I define
possible.
it that way?
I mean, that's your own subjective like definition. I wouldn't. That's not applicable during this debate.
So you can
As
disagree
subjective.
with my definition, but
I
I
mean,
can't
because that's
disagree
not
with
the
yours.
definition of a chair.
But what you said was you would need to prove this definition is impossible,
Yeah,
logically
yeah. You would
contradicting
have to go
or
back centuries
self-contradicting.
and prove like why this interpretation of God, which I've already like. I think like this is like something that's already been agreed upon in debate. Like I've been telling this whole time, that's my definition of God, right? Why it'd just be inherently wrong.
Well,
I think this is where we start to lose people, right? So,
okay.
real quick, just this is factual. By default, we're all agnostic. Okay,
Hmm.
whether you're Protestant, Christian, however you identify within theism, by default, we're all agnostic because it's considered theory. Now, with that being said, what I think we're getting to is pivoting into semantics when we start talking about comparing a chair. But I do see where Emmett's going with this. Dead boy. He's explaining. He's talking about perception, and how you see something that's real versus that's not real. So like in
I'm
theism, it's a faith where you cannot see the deity. You have faith in something that you cannot see.
I'm just
Am
demonstrating the absurdity of the argument because you can prove almost anything.
But yeah, it wouldn't be absurd because again, my argument is semantically based, right? And based off like the definition of God, a necessary being, right? That you using the fucking what's the word analogy of a chair is just wrong because that's not at all. You can't analogize that. Like it's that like that doesn't help your argument at all. Like like you actually said that for no reason. Like you can say that's how you define a chair, but that's not actual what a chair is. A chair is not defined as something that's necessary. Again, if you can go
So
find
real quick, Dead Boy, I get what you're saying. And Evan, I think let's move on to another topic within theism. Like, let's continue on to another topic. So we kind of discussed, Emmett's belief in perception with being, atheist and agnostic. Um, and then we discussed, your belief, Dead Boy, which, I will allow you to elaborate on a little bit more. But which one of you would like to actually bring up another discussion point here?
Um,
Let's kind of move on to another theist discussion
sure.
point.
I mean, could we like say our final things about it?
Yeah, yeah. Closing statements are 2 minutes each. So who would like to start?
Okay. He could go if he wants.
uh
Okay, Dead Boy, go ahead.
okay. So basically, um he came to the consensus. Well, already, like in the debate previously, I established my definition of God. If he had a problem with my definition, like he's like supposed to like, attack it then and there, but he didn't do that. So like, he didn't like incoherently it concede to my definition. So with I gave my syllogism where I say Malcolm's modal. I get that Malcolm's modal thing. So basically, in short, um if he can't prove that God's like existence, like the concept of God is self-contradictory, then I would basically win because I agree that as I literally like established before in the debate, God's like the definition of God would be a being that's like unnecessary as necessary existence, right? And basically my argument is if you cannot prove him to be impossible, then he must exist, right? He's trying to like say he brought up like the analogy of a chair and called like begging the question, which that wouldn't be the case because that's not what a chair is defined as. A god is defined as a being, right? That's like necessary. What you should have done from the jump when I called God like necessary, you should have attacked my definition of necessary like God, but you didn't do so. You didn't try to do it later, which like I'm not sure how I debate here, but like where I come from, you can't like
30 seconds.
you can't backtrack. But I think I would have just like won because like he didn't refute my definition of God. And if it goes through, then he literally didn't prove at all like the concept of God is self contradictory. So therefore God's existence is not impossible. So therefore he would exist in all possible worlds, basically.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Deadboy. And Emmett, closing statement, 2 minutes.
Yeah, so what I would say is just because something exists in one possible world, right? That, or just because something, well, I guess I could go back to the chair thing, right? So if you're defining, if we're trying to prove God exists and you're defining God as existing in the actual world, then there's a problem, right? Because it's very obviously question begging. You say what about God is you know where he needs to exist in all possible worlds, or what I can define, or you said unless you can demonstrate that my definition is this idea of God is self-contradictory, then there's no problem with using it. But I can also use the same argument to say, well, this necessarily existing chair, which is invisible, right, undetectable, um, it exists in all possible worlds, therefore it exists in the actual world, therefore this chair exists. And I don't think you would think that's a convincing argument. So I think that's all.
It's awesome debate. Thank you both for joining. We were doing
Mm-hmm.
some testing with the stage perms and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
I believe Wall is going to open up. We're going to open up a stage for kind of like open debate and allow everybody to kind of hop in. We'll have a couple of discussion points tonight. If any of you would be interested in
Yeah,
doing
for
that,
sure.
it's not going to be one-on-one. It'll just kind of be everybody in, and I'll help moderate with Wall's and Eddie's permission, of course, and Godric's. So yeah, I really appreciate everybody that kind of like jumped in and watched. I'm not sure if Wall's going to close this, and then we'll go ahead and kind of like announce an open debate stage, and then we can kind of let everybody join that, and I'll help moderate.
For sure.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
GG.